Impatient thinking can lead a person into some very big mistakes. First of all, when you are always looking somewhere else, whether it's down the road or up toward the top of the mountain or off toward the left field fence, where you're hoping to hit that grand slam home run, when you're looking off in the distance like that, you often miss what's under your very own nose. That means the pleasure and fun of living which come in the here and now get overlooked for something that not only isn't here yet, but might never arrive. True patience is more than just a waiting game. Patience doesn't mean you sit around hoping for something to happen. Patience is not a passive quality. Sometimes patience can mean doing something else entirely, thinking about another venture, taking off in a different direction, while you give events a chance to run their course, where you can try anything you want in order to hurry things up, but things just aren't going to hurry. In fact, there's only one thing that will work, and that is patience. It's strange, but young people have a much more difficult time with patience than people who have more experience in the world. It seems like the older people get, the more able they are to wait, despite the fact that sometimes they have considerably less time to wait in. You could argue that older people ought to learn how to act quickly and decisively, while younger people need to learn how to wait. When you're young, you really have just about all the time in the world, and you just can't wait to use it. For a young person to have patience is a rare and powerful thing. How can we explain that impatience of the young? Maybe it's because when you're a teenager or in your early 20s, 1 year seems like a very long time. 5 years seems like forever, and 10 years is almost more than you can possibly imagine. But more mature individuals can actually look back 10 or 20 or even 30 years, and they can use the knowledge they've gained to create patience and a sense of perspective. At the risk of confusing you, I'm going to make what may sound like a contradictory statement. Here it is. A patient man is always richer than an impatient one, even if the patient man has less money. What do I mean by that statement? Well, riches and wealth can take other forms besides dollars and cents. Okay, that sounds good. So in what sense is the patient man richer? The actual answer is very simple. A patient man is always richer than the impatient one because the patient man can always afford to wait. The patient man is never desperate. The patient man has time to spare, while the man in a hurry is always on the verge of bankruptcy as far as time is concerned. In any situation you can think of, impatience is a source of weakness and fear, while patience is substance and strength. And here's another way that patience gives the person who has it an incalculable advantage over the person who doesn't, and gives him deeper insight into himself and others, which is a mark of great character. If you can only see the short term, if you can only think in terms of the here and now, then you are like a man with one eye. You can't judge distances. You live in a world that's flat and two-dimensional. In other words, the impatient person lacks all sense of perspective. Perspective lets you measure your plans and current events against things that have already occurred, and also against your desires and aspirations for the future. Then and now, here and there, near and far, need and know, watch and wait. These are the dual optics that allow the patient man to see in stereo, where the nearsighted person sees only the present, or the dreamer sees only an imaginary future, and more likely than not, trips over his mistakes trying to get there.
Most people go through life holding back. Answer your calling. Whatever you're called to do, don't count yourself out. Don't say, I can't do that. Many of us go through life saying no, and you don't even know what you're saying no to. You don't know what you cannot do if you're not willing to challenge yourself. Whatever it is that you don't know how to do right now, you can learn. I did not know how to speak for major corporations. I didn't know how to do that. But I decided to become a student. If you do your research, if you do your homework, if you make the commitment that I'm going to learn, when you look at what do I have going for me and drop your buckets where you are, decide I'm going to work and get myself together. A guy named Jim Rohn said, if you develop your gifts will take you places that you'll never begin to imagine.
I mean, how bad do you want your goal right now? I think there's a lot of people in the world today, because it's a really niche thing to talk about. I want this. This is my outcome. This is my goal. Like, how bad do you want? Do you want it as bad as breathing? Do you want it as bad as anything you ever wanted in your life? And if you calibrate it at the highest enough levels, what I found is the people that are the hungriest, they find a way. When you know why you want something, when it's desperation, the power of being desperate is something that most people avoid. They think desperation is a weakness. And I'm here to tell you, desperation is one of the most powerful emotions you could possibly possess, because when you're desperate, you find reserves and reservoirs of ideas, talents, and a strength that you don't know you have when you find yourself in a desperate situation. So ironically, the one thing most people avoid in their life, hunger, which is caused by being desperate. When you're starving, you become desperate. Think of somebody who's starving on the street. How resourceful would you get if your children were literally starving and you had to feed them? So the number one thing we need more than anything to win is hunger, which comes from a state of desperation. Yet we're constantly trying to comfort ourselves in the real world to avoid the state of being desperate. And I'm telling you that I think you need to embrace desperation again in your life. Like, do you want it so bad that you're desperate for it? All of the silly things that happen that we let slow us down is related to our lack of hunger and desperation.
Because real lions like to hunt. They love the process just as much as they love the prize. I'm saying that some of you in this room, you might not be a lion yet. You might have small beginnings. You might not have a lot of money. You might not have a lot of resources, but there's no excuse. And I need you to understand, for those of you who are 70% beast mode, 30% gazelle, that's just enough for that other person to outdo you. There are only 86,400 seconds in a day. And you gotta not only operate in them, you gotta do it quick. You gotta do it fast. You gotta do it in a hurry. Why? Because there's somebody else who's on the same track you on. Somebody else, you're on the same path that you on. It's somebody else just like you trying to do it. And sometimes they're working just as hard as you're working. They're putting in just as much sweat, just as much tears, just as much blood. But you just gotta do it what? You gotta do it faster than they do it. You gotta do it quicker than they do it. Are you listening to what I'm saying? That's why I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, because if you're getting up at 6, you might be smarter than me. You might have more privilege than me. You might have more resources than me. You might. But I'm going to get up earlier than you, and I'm going to do it faster than you do it. So by the time you get up with all your resources, by the time you get up with all your privilege, by the time you get up with all your stuff, I've already finished the race. Are you hearing me? Your family might come from privilege. Your daddy might own the company, but you will not outwork me. This top spot, this number one, that's mine. Because not one of you can outwill me. You may have been born with more genetic prowess than I have, but you cannot out-determine me. You can't outwill me. You can't outwant me. You can't outwork me. You can't out-desire me. The bigger your dream is, the harder the grind. I started from the bottom, like you like listening to it and see. Started from the bottom now. What's your bottom?
Tell me one thing in your life that is great that came as a result of being comfortable. Because everywhere I look and everywhere I see in today's society, everybody's doing everything they can to be more comfortable. They're looking for the more convenience. They're looking for the quicker. They're looking for the faster. See, there's opportunity in that for those of you who want to get better. Because I'm going to tell you right now, all the reasons that these successful people that you look up to, that you aspire to be like, are the way they are, have all come from a place of being uncomfortable.